Okay, practitioners, we have a really cool guest today. I am so excited to have Beth Lachance on our show today. Welcome to the show, Beth.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here, Adrian. Thank you so much.
Oh, I am excited. I am got my paper ready to take 1,012 notes. So because I was like, this is just absolutely perfect. Before we get into all my questions, I would love for you to share your story of how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, you know what? It is a zigzag. It is not a straight line to what I'm doing today. It is an absolute zigzag. So, um, where I started, I started as a pharmaceutical sales rep after college, and I have spent most of my adulthood in medical practices, bouncing around from all different types of medical practices. And I paid heavily attention to what was happening behind the scenes in those medical practices. And so what kind of, brought me to this world is my husband had started a virtual assistant company years ago that specializes mainly in real estate and helping with tasks with real estate entrepreneurs. And so when him and I joined forces together to start a new VA company, it was just a natural progression. I had said to him, like, we belong in the medical space. There's a huge need within the medical space for medical virtual assistants. And I know exactly the tasks that they could be really great at and where they can make an immediate impact with the practices, with the practitioners, with the patients. So so then I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to go for it. And, he's a pump the brakes kind of guy. So he was like, whoa, like we need to do proof of concept. Let's start with one practice. And, I've been in sales my whole life. So I'm like, no, go. So I, he's the operations kind of behind the scenes who kind of made me pump the brakes and like really, really sit back and kind of get out the drawing board and kind of put it all together. But the need is there and it has proven itself. So we're talking, 4 years in the making. It has been incredible. We've had expanded leaps and bounds. We have almost 1,000 people working for us in this space now. And so we are cranking and we're making a huge impact with medical practices.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I am just so excited because you're so right. Like being in the behind the scenes of medical offices, you see all that truly goes on. Like what is missing.
Yes. And there's multiple departments. I mean, there's so much that happens, from the front desk all the way to the back office. There's so much that happens behind the scenes. And it was just, it was a matter of really pulling the pieces together to try to make sure that, okay, well, where can we be the most impactful? Where can we really be helpful in the practices? So we've really kind of put those things together and it's just an exciting time. And it's an exciting time also because, with COVID, it really launched the idea that it is possible to have remote staffing. It is possible to get tasks done remotely. And, previous to this, virtual assistants were known in many other specialties and in many other fields outside of medical, but really not in the medical space. Yeah. And so this was just, COVID was kind to the business in that it opened up practitioners' minds that, wow, this absolutely can be done. I can save money. I can save office space. I can get the additional staffing I need. I can scale efficiently, scale quickly, and make an impact with the practice. So it's just launched. I mean, it's been amazing.
Oh, I'm so excited for y'all. This is awesome. But I want to know, so I'm thinking of like, I have had a traditional VA. What is the difference between like a VA and a medical VA? Like, I think they're just going to be more magical or like, tell me everything.
More magical for sure. Well, no, the very big difference is that our medical virtual assistants here at Riva have a medical background. So they have a bachelor's degree in nursing, they have a bachelor's degree in some sort of medical field, they've practiced in the medical field, or they've come directly with insurance information, insurance background for US based. So they understand copays, they understand deductibles, they understand how claims work, they understand all of that. So, so that is really our medical virtual assistant. So they have an understanding of how the practice can work and what needs to get done and the tasks that need to get done.
That's amazing. I'm just thinking of like, oh, I don't know any of our listeners that couldn't benefit from this. And because I hear so many of our listeners struggle with the whole insurance side, and they're just like, I don't know, I'm a provider, I don't understand that. So is that something your VAs can help with?
Yes, absolutely. And actually it is the most time consuming piece of what happens in the medical practices now, because most insurance prior authorizations, insurance verifications all need to be done with making a phone call to the insurance company. And that is time consuming. And in a lot of cases, if it's not the practitioner, which most cases it's not, it's either a medical assistant or a designated insurance person within the practice. But the reality is they should be spending time doing other tasks. There's the hold times calling the insurance companies to verify the benefits, to verify the codes. That can all be done with a medical virtual assistant and be done really, really well and get the information back to the practice that's needed for the patient. And so there's so many other ways you could be utilizing those butts in those seats in the practice to really be helping with patient care versus just sitting on the phone verifying benefits.
Oh, so true. Okay, so check, they can do all the insurance stuff. What other things can these magical unicorns of medical VAs do?
Well, I mean, think about every possible position within a medical practice, starting at the front desk. So obviously a medical virtual assistant is a remote person. So they're not going to be sitting at the front desk, but they can do phone triage, picking up those busy calls, picking up the phones, all the scheduling needs, whether it's, canceling appointments, scheduling appointments, rescheduling appointments, all of that can be done. Basic triage. A lot of medical practices are extraordinarily busy and their phones are just ringing off the hook. And now patients are getting really picky about their care. They want white glove service, right? So they want to know when I call my dermatology practice or I call my dietitian, I want to be able to reach them, or I want to be able to know that I'm talking to a live person. Yeah. So a medical virtual assistant can do that and then can make sure that the information is getting to the practitioner or getting to the nurse or getting to the billing department or whatever department is needed to get involved. So they can do all of that. So that's just the front desk piece, right? Then there's like new patient intakes. New patient intakes for new patients coming to your practice are time consuming.
Yes.
And if you've got someone at your front desk that's managing the front desk and they're managing the phones, and then they've got to do a full new patient intake with a patient, it isn't possible. Either the phones are going to get picked up by the service, or ultimately you got the glass closed and the patient standing there in front of it knows the glass is closed and I can't bother the receptionist right now, she's busy. So ultimately, if we can take that off of the front desk, those new patient intakes, getting all the details needed to get put directly into the EMR can be done by a medical virtual assistant. Wow. So that's just front desk. That's just that piece. Then there's fax review. So a lot of busy practices, there's faxes coming in for referrals, faxes coming in for, for results of blood results, whatever they may be, whatever is happening within that practice. Any of the faxes are now all done digitally, right? Everyone can log in digitally and be able to see those things and be able to put them where they need to go, right? Yep. So all of that can be done as well. So fax review, data entry, putting in results from anything that comes in. Then of course there's the full insurance piece, right? Insurance verifications, prior authorizations for medications, which is a huge concern, Huge, right? So many times you have patients that are walking out the door, that have seen the practitioner, they're going to need a prescription, but they need a prior authorization in order to get that prescription filled. Who's going to do that? A medical virtual assistant can get that done. So that's just that. Then there's the back end, the billing, claims, denials, collections. We're talking, almost every single department within the practice. So yeah, there's a lot that can be done.
Yes, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's like, I'm thinking of like payroll and all of these. So do you need a virtual assistant for each of those pieces, or like, how does it work?
Yes, question. So a lot of the really, really busy practices, ultimately because they're very big, they're scaling and they're trying to get bigger and bigger. the best way to do this is really to delegate certain tasks to certain VAs.
Mm.
Only because the sheer volume, number one, also the delegation of the tasks to make sure that they're getting done in an appropriate fashion, efficiently, correctly, getting back into the EMR in a timely fashion. So yes, it's typically, most of the bigger practices are utilizing one medical virtual assistant for, let's say, or two or three for front desk. Different medical virtual assistants are then working in the back office, working for, that revenue cycle team. So yes, there's different ways, but we do have some of our virtual assistants are multitasked and they are multiversed and they can help with the front desk and also do claims and billing. So it really just depends on the needs of the practice.
That helps because I think a lot of our listeners may not be like these large practices just
Right.
yet. And they
Yes.
might have like 2 or 3 dietitians, but the owners are just feeling absolutely swamped. And so they would need somebody that could do all of the things. And so one that could do all of the things would be wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. And we've got a lot of small practices. We've got a lot of small startups that, there are brand new practitioners. They're just one physician, or one practitioner in the practice. And the VAs, they learn the tasks that need to get done. They're working closely with the owners because typically the owner is that single practitioner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And or working with the one other nurse or the other, person and medical assistant that's in the office. So yes, it's all possible. It can be done, and on a small scale and on a large scale. Yes.
Wow. So with all of these medical providers and medical assistants, does it feel like the practices are able to grow faster? Like what have you noticed when like they add in a medical VA to practices?
Oh yeah. Great question. So I think, you know what, let's pause. Sorry. There's an ambulance going by. Sorry about that. I don't know if you could hear that. All right. So Adrien, could you repeat that question one more time?
What did I ask? Sugar pops. Now I just forgot.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's funny. My brain just went 100% blank. It's all the Sudafed.
Sorry about that.
No, what did I ask? Shoot. It was a good one too.
Yes, about practitioners and growing their practice.
Oh yeah. Okay, got it. Now I got it.
Yep.
So once we add in a medical VA, because the practitioners aren't so swamped anymore, have you seen the practices grow faster? Like what have you seen once we add in that medical VA?
Oh, yes. So you know what? It's multifaceted. Number one, the practitioner, especially if it's a really small practice, they absolutely love the transition that happens because they start realizing, oh my gosh, I have time to get out of the weeds. I'm no longer handling billing or claims or denials. Or even payroll, like I can start kind of moving off and doing other things. And so, yes, that's when, like all of us, we're all business owners here. When you're down in the weeds, and I listened to your podcast on getting out of the weeds with CEO, as a CEO, it's so important because, yes, we tend to want to control everything, especially when we're starting off small, and who else is going to do it? Only us, because there's nobody else to do it. But once you start growing your team, and once you've got a medical virtual assistant that's working with you, it is so easy then to pull yourself out of the weeds, which then you can see expansion so much easier, because then you've got the time, you've got the vision again, you're really focusing on other things that need to happen to expand. And so I've seen it in so many different ways with some of the smaller practices and even some of the larger practices, because each department starts working and functioning truly on its own. And so then they have the ability to really focus in on how can we make this department run more efficiently, more effectively? Can we start really focusing in on some of those red flags and those things that we ignore because we haven't had time to address? Now we can address those things. And then before you know it, the practice just ultimately is generating more revenue. You're seeing more patients. There's more happening. And so therefore, it's a beautiful thing. It's the practice just expands.
That's wonderful. I love that. So looking at y'all's website, and I was trying to think of like, okay, what, because it's global. I'm like, yes. Do you have VAs that speak other languages?
Great question. We are all English speaking only now,
Okay.
but in the future, we're looking to expand. Spanish speaking is such a huge need, especially in the medical practices across the country. So that will be something we'll be focusing on in the near future. But right now it's all English speaking.
Got it. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, because we have Spanish speaking providers, but our admin team doesn't. And I'm just like, oh, this is
Right.
like how to really help that. Oh, I can't wait. You'll have to keep us posted because, like you said, it truly is a need in the medical community.
Yes,
Ah,
it is. Absolutely.
so how does a small practice get started? Like, where do we even begin?
Yeah, great question. So it's really just as simple as, you know, there's a little bit of work that has to happen behind the scenes, right? You've got, as a single practitioner or a small practice, you've got to sit down and kind of figure out, okay, where are the pain points in the practice? Where are the needs? Who do we already have that's working within the practice? Can we redelegate tasks and move things around? Right now, especially now, finding really good people is hard to do, right? Here in the United States, and filling those open positions and practices is really hard to do. So if you have people that are good, you don't want to lose them. So you've got to really sit back and analyze, what's the morale of your team? Are they happy? Do they love what they're doing? Or are they just extraordinarily overwhelmed? Do you have some people that are really smart and really good, but they're doing lower level tasks that just they have to get done, the tasks they need to get done? They're part of practice, they're part of the practice, but is that going to burn that person out or these people out? So that's something that is probably one of the very first things that a practitioner should do, is kind of sit back and analyze, okay, who do I have on my team right now? Where else would they be really good within the practice? Right.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got somebody who's at the front desk who's extraordinary with patient care, but you really could be utilizing her or him in a higher fashion, instead of just checking patients in and out. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where you have to kind of sit back. There's a little bit of work that needs to happen. What are the pain points? Who do we already have here? Let's stack rank them. Let's figure out, what are they good at? What are their skill sets? And then possibly reimagine the practice in a different way, bringing in a medical virtual assistant to do some of the things that just the grunt work that has to get done, right? It just has to get done. But you're really focusing on the morale of your team. And that has been a huge focus. That has been just an absolute big benefit of bringing in medical virtual assistants, is the morale of the onshore on-staff team that are in the practice. They just light up about the virtual assistants that work with them. Because imagine, you're a mom, I'm a mom. Who wants to do dishes, right?
No.
Nobody wants to do the dishes, right? It's just like a task that has to get done, right? So imagine if somebody just every day magically did your dishes. Like, they're just gone, they're just done, right? So I'm using this analogy only because, you can envision that, and that's easy to figure out and kind of say, oh my God, like, I'm walking into the kitchen and it's just done. Like, they're not even there. And so that's kind of what the medical virtual assistants do for the practice, for the staff. Is like, oh my God, those insurance verifications, they're done. They're like, they've already completed. They're in the EMR. And so they light up, morale goes up, people get excited about the job they have. And so therefore, you're not going to lose people to other practices, right? They're not going to resign. They're not going to, the great resignation, right? You don't want your good people to leave. So those are just some of the things that up front, as if you want to get started with a medical virtual assistant, start thinking about your staff that you already have. Think about your practice and the pain points. Then kind of line item it out, and then set up a strategy session with me. And we can sit down and kind of go through, okay, where can we have an immediate impact with your practice? And then we just kind of get started. We'll just like rock and roll on what's the best way. Let's pick a start date. We already can, figure out what are the main tasks that need to get done. We'll select the VA that we think is the best fit for that particular role. And then we set up a meeting with a meet and greet with the client service manager here at Riva, so that client service manager is immediately integrated and is part of the plan of trying to get the VAs, into the practice and start working out really well.
Oh my gosh, I'm just like thinking of how many it would just be nice to like have plug in, because like you're so correct when like the morale of the team, the in-house team is just like, we're swamped. We're just so swamped. Like faxing. We haven't even thought about faxing. We are so overwhelmed with like the phones. Like, yeah, that we'll get to that when we get to that. That's not priorities when the phone's ringing off the hooks. And so I think that that's so helpful of just like, okay, how to really help the people that you do have and not burn them out.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's a way to be able to do this where you can then really keep those really great people and then expand your practice by utilizing virtual assistants, but it doesn't break the bank. It saves a tremendous amount of money using medical virtual assistants from Riva. So it just is a huge all around, it really helps the practice.
Oh my gosh. I know everybody that's listening is like, oh my gosh, how do we learn more? Where do we find you? So tell us, like, give us the goodies. Like, how do we like get started with Riva? Like, tell us everything.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, it's so simple. So you can just very simply just go to our website, go to rivaglobalmd.com, and you can click on, get a strategy session. You want a strategy session, click on it, and immediately you can set up an appointment with me, and then we can have a conversation and kind of walk through your needs and get started.
Oh my gosh. Well, we will definitely have all of those links in our show notes, because I was just like thinking about all these conversations that I've had with our listeners of just, you've like explained every single one I've ever talked to. They're just overwhelmed and they have like okay staff, but they're just overwhelming their staff with more and more and more and more and more. And so I love that you guys have this wonderful solution. Beth, this has been so eye-opening, so helpful to our listeners. But before we go, I always like to ask our guests, like, what is something besides going to Riva Global Medical? What is something our listeners can do today to kind of start to get that ball rolling to grow their practice or grow their business?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I love that you asked this question. So, a couple of things. Number one, take a step back out of your business for a day and assess the people you already have. Assess the tasks that they're doing. See, are their skill sets really filling in what they're really, does it really match what they're doing? Are they overperforming and they really should be in a different role? Is there different ways that you can be utilizing the people that you have? Who in your practice can you not lose, right? Who would your practice will fall apart, right? Make sure you know who those people are and figure out, okay, how can I keep their morale high? What are tasks that we can get off their plate to really fully utilize them in the best way possible, where they feel really fulfilled every day in their job. Then don't be afraid for change. Don't be afraid of bringing in a medical virtual assistant. Yes, it would be new to the practice, but it would expand and change things in such an amazing way. And we've seen it across the board in so many practices. Our doctors, our nurses, all the practitioners that we get involved with, the onshore, front desk people, everyone, the amount of feedback, positive feedback we get they just love the medical virtual assistants that are working with them. It's incredible. It's just incredible. They're making a huge impact with the practices, and everybody feels that. So don't be afraid as a practitioner to take the plunge, it's possible, it can be done. And it can be done amazingly, where you would never want to go back.
I love that as advice, because I think I hear so many people are just afraid of spending the money, afraid of like losing that control. But you're so true. Like, don't be afraid of change, because it will only allow for growth.
Yep, absolutely.
Beth, this has just been so wonderful. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And we will definitely put all of the links in our show notes. Thank you again.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Adrien.